have our 6 candidates running for the 3 open seats on the Brunswick County Board of Commissioners. I'll take the opportunity to introduce them to you. We have William Flythe, who is a candidate for District 3 here first. We have Pat Sykes, also running in District 3. We have the 2 candidates from District 4. Mike Forte is here, and along with Brenda McMillian, she is here. And District 5 candidates, Frank Williams and Wesley Hickman. Once again, each one of the candidates will get a 60-second opening statement. They'll get 60 seconds to answer the questions developed by the board members of the ABCPOA, and 60 seconds to answer question or a closing statement. And we do want to save some time for questions to come from the audience. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're ready, we're going to go in. We'll go in the order of the districts and alphabetically. So we'll begin first with a 60-second opening statement from District 3 candidate William Flythe. William, 60 seconds, please.
Good evening, Brunswick County citizens. I'm Bill Flythe, candidate for the Brunswick County Board of Commissioners. I decided to run for a seat on this board because of the poor decisions made by the current board members. First, they chose to purchase a parcel of land for twice the tax value, $3.5 million versus a tax value of $1.7 million on the books. Secondly, they chose to pass a resolution in support of seismic testing and offshore drilling for oil and gas. And currently, they have failed to collect on more than $10 million of unpaid taxes on our tax books, delinquent taxes owed by developers and land speculators. I'm well qualified to be a member of the board because of my diverse experience. 15 years as a chemistry teacher at a college and high school level, more than 20 years as a senior laboratory supervisor for a Fortune 100 company.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's 60 seconds. Okay. Thank you, sir. Next, for an opening statement in District 3 candidate, we'll go 60 seconds to Pat Sykes. Ms. Sykes, 60 seconds, please.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to thank John Evans, WCTV, and ATMC, and the Alliance of Brunswick County Property Owners Association for having this forum tonight. And I'd like to thank each one of you for being here. As a Brunswick County native, born and raised in Southport, a small business owner for over 25 years, married for 45 years, we have 1 son, a granddaughter, a daughter-in-law, and 1 grandson. I have 32 years of federal government service. I've worked with the Brunswick County for 2 years. I've worked 2 years with the Brunswick County school system, and I worked for the town of Oak Island. It's an honor serving the citizens of Brunswick County. During the past 4 years, I've made a difference by being conservative with your tax dollars, transparent and honest. I requested and voted to support pay-as-you-go for capital improvements. I believe spending should be based on needs, not wants. Keeping spending and taxes low is very important. It's an honor to serve you, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, for his opening statement, we will go to District 4 candidate Mike Forte. Mr. Forte, 60 seconds, please.
Thank you, John, and WECT and the ABCPOA for putting this on tonight and allowing us this opportunity to address all of you. I've made Brunswick County my home for over 11 years now. I'm a proud Brunswick County resident. I will live here for the rest of my life. I am a small business owner of over 40 years. I currently have real estate investments. I own 5 homes, 5 wooded lots. So keep that in mind if you think I'm going to raise taxes, because I get hit tenfold. I attended Fordham University in New York, where I majored in accounting. And I am in this building very proudly because I am the president of the foundation at this fine institute. I love this college. I think it's a shining star of this county, and I don't think we utilize it quite enough. I am also a former city commissioner of Boiling Spring Lakes. So I do have government experience.
Thank you, sir.
So
thank you, sir.
Thank you, John.
Next, for an opening statement, 60 seconds, District 4 candidate Brenda McMillian. Ms. McMillian.
I'm Brenda McMillian. I hail from Snowfield community, which is just below Brunswick Forest. I grew up in an area where farming was prevalent. I know what it is to work hard. I know what it is to work smart. I worked with the Brunswick County Department of Social Services for 30-plus years in various capacities. I've worked with people from various socioeconomic levels, from Bald Head to the South Carolina line, all the way up to the Columbus County line. I've even worked in other counties because of conflict of interest with the cases that I was assigned. I care about you. I want you to be happy, and in order for you to be happy, you need resources. Education is important. Jobs are vital. Seniors need to be respected because they're the backbone on which this county was built. Water has to be addressed.
Thank you, ma'am. That's 60 seconds. Thank you, ma'am. Next for his opening statement, District 5 County Commission candidate Wesley Hickman. Mr. Hickman.
Hi, my name is Wesley Hickman, and I'm running for District 5 County Commissioner of Brunswick County. I'm a fifth-generation Brunswick County resident, so I hope you can tell from that I have a very vested interest in this county and its success. I graduated from the class of 1999 at West Brunswick High School. I was in the top of my class. I was fortunate enough to go to UNC Chapel Hill, where I received my doctorate from the #1 University of Pharmacy School in the United States of America. I am proud of that. Go Heels. I'd also like to say that I am the #5 ranked pharmacy manager in the entire chain of CVS, a Fortune 7 company. So I hope you understand that I can bring that kind of business acumen to running the county. I understand what it's like to run on a corporate budget structure, to have very little resources, and to maximize that. So I hope you understand I can do that for you guys at the county level. And something else I'd like to address is the drug problem. We're #1 ranked for opiate abuse in the United States of America, and that's a stain I would like to remove from this county as your county commissioner. So I hope I can ask for your vote in the next election. Thank you very much.
And our last opening statement will come from District 5 County Commission candidate Frank Williams. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, John, and thank you to the Alliance of Property Owners Associations for hosting this, and thank you to everyone in the audience. As I said in our last forum, being a citizen in a free country is not a spectator sport, so thank you for showing up and for being here. I am also a Brunswick County native, as are many of the other folks here. I grew up in the community of Northwest, which is just barely in Brunswick County, near Columbus County, up in the northern end of the county. Very rural, very agricultural, and my family's been there since at least the mid-1800s, so we have a vested interest in the county. When I graduated from North Brunswick High School, I went to Raleigh and attended NC State University, so go Wolfpack, Wesley. You see the red tie and the blue tie. But I stayed in Raleigh for a number of years after college, and then I made a conscious choice to move from what the media and the magazines tell you is the greatest place to do business and to live back here to Brunswick County, which the media in Raleigh may not recognize it, but this is the best place to live because most of you would be living somewhere else and would not have moved here if it wasn't a great place. I respectfully ask for your vote so that we can keep it that way, and I look forward to talking with you more tonight.
Mr. Williams, thank you. For our first question, Mr. Forte, I'm going to ask you for the first response to it, sir, if I may. Recently released job numbers show both New Hanover and Pender counties improved in the job front, while Brunswick County lagged behind. The question, why do you think this is the case, and what can you as a county commissioner do to help improve the job situation?
Great question, John.
Thank you.
#1, Brunswick County, there's a serious lack of jobs to begin with. Tourism is our real only industry. I will also point out, though, that just 3 years ago, in 2013, our unemployment rate was just under 13%. It's now well under 6%, so it's not as grim as they make it out to be. We need to bring in jobs. We need manufacturing, industry, warehousing. We need full-time, year-round jobs, not just part-time tourism jobs. Economic development, find these companies, get them here. Thank you, John.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hickman, why do you think this is the case of Brunswick County lagging behind in job growth, and what can you as a county commissioner do to help improve the situation?
In my industry, we look at rates of change, how fast something moves. And you can see from the current commissioner's leadership that we are lagging behind other counties that have showed some advancement. I think part of that is attributed to the lack of leadership in the EDC, the Economic Development Committee. They have been torn apart. They've wasted $82,000 of taxpayer money on parties, bonuses, things such as that. So we have no real leadership there. The county's tried to reincorporate that structure into their grasp there, but I don't feel like we've seen any growth, and that's very evident by the numbers, the lack that we're growing behind Pender and New Hanover County. I think that we need leaders in that department that have seen counties grow like ours. If you look at Cary, for example, around Raleigh, they've seen tremendous growth in that area, and that's something I'd like to bring here by finding strong leaders that can help drive businesses and bring them to this area.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flythe, why do you think Brunswick County is lagging behind other nearby counties in job growth? What can you as a county commissioner do to improve that?
John, it's lagging because of the political interference we've had in this county for a number of years. We had a company that was willing to come here, but it did not come because the politicians did not like the fact that the donor or the landowner was of the opposite party. I believe that instead of downgrading economic development department, a commission, we should upgrade it. We should take it out of the planning department and create an autonomous, independent economic development commission. And we want a partnership formed by BCC, business interests, as well as the government. And I think if we do that and take politics out of it, we'll be able to grow jobs and develop the two industrial parks that we have in this county.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Williams, why do you think Brunswick County is lagging behind in job growth compared to other local counties, and what can you as a commissioner do to improve that?
First thing I'll say is I'll refer back to what Mr. Forte already said, that if you look back 4 years ago, our unemployment rate was about 13%. We've cut it in half since then. That's largely driven by the private sector. We're not as strong as some other counties nearby, but we're stronger than other counties that are also nearby. And a lot of that is driven by just the market trends that we see out there. What can we do as a county? The first thing we need to do is strengthen our brand identity. The second thing, and this is something I've heard other candidates from both parties up here talk about, is strengthen our workforce, and that's a very long-term thing. Something I've already done in that arena is, as our representative on the Cape Fear Council of Governments, I've appointed someone from Brunswick Community College and several Brunswick County industry leaders who recruit from our workforce to serve on the Regional Cape Fear Workforce Board, and that was in the past few months, and I think that we're already seeing some improvements on that board from those new people serving there.
Mr. Williams, thank you. Ms. McMillian, why do you think Brunswick County is lagging behind other nearby counties in job growth? What can you as a commissioner do to help improve that?
I think we have not tapped into our resources that are here in the county in terms of human understanding, human abilities. There are so many people that have retired here to Brunswick County from other counties, other states, that are very knowledgeable of different industries that could benefit Brunswick County. But sometimes people who have lived in the county become sort of territorial, not wanting to accept the ideas of people who may be viewed as outsiders, but ideas are ideas and they need to be considered. We need to boost up the industry. In my opinion, economic development and planning department need to be separated because they have unique functions and they need to be empowered to perform the role without any kind of restrictions being put on them because of constraints from one particular group or the other.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Sykes, why do you think Brunswick County is lagging behind other nearby counties in job growth? What can you as a commissioner do to improve that?
Well, basically, the two counties are not even alike. New Hanover is urban, Brunswick is rural. We have a large land mass. We're also, as a commissioner of the past 4 years, we have worked hard with economic development to reorganize, and we have had several opportunities for industries to come here and small businesses. And we've worked with the small businesses and have moved forward. Industry is very hard to get here because they don't just look at they look at education, they look at the environment, they look at the weather. There's a variety of things. And as a commissioner, I will continue to search for companies, work with businesses. Small businesses are very important to us. And as long as they're compatible with our county and they protect our environment, and as long as I can keep the taxes and the spending low, they will come here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. McMillian, I'm going to ask you for the first response to the next question. The Wilmington Metropolitan Planning Organization recently tabled a resolution, and part of it urged the early consideration of another bridge crossing the Cape Fear River. The question, do you support the need for a new bridge? Where do you think it should be located?
Based on my travels back and forth to Wilmington, I definitely believe we need an alternate route here into Brunswick County. We need to do it in a way that's least disruptive to any of the communities. I'm a great proponent of moving south. Everything is sort of congregated in the Leland area, and if we move further south than Brunswick Forest and some of the other communities, we will be able to maintain communities intact and use some of the virgin land that's not currently being utilized.
Mr. Williams, do you support the need for a new bridge across the Cape Fear River? Where do you think it should be located?
Well, first, one clarification to the question. The resolution was tabled in August. In September, 2 separate resolutions were passed by the MPO, one of which does call for that to be advocated and also calls for a replacement of the existing bridge, and another one on a different topic. So it was tabled so it could be separated. I do support the completion of a new crossing at some point in the future. I would support, as Ms. McMillian said, a southern route. I would like for it to not impact Brunswick Forest if at all possible. For one, those people have invested a lot of their time and money into their homes. Secondly, DOT has to pay money to buy every piece of property it buys, and what's going to cost more for our tax dollars, buying a nice house or buying empty land? So I think that makes sense. I do think we cannot forget about the importance of replacing the existing Cape Fear Memorial Bridge as well. And John, I was right behind you in traffic today, so I feel your pain.
I was going to make that the first question, but I decided to wait a second. Ms. Sykes, do you support the need for a new bridge, and where do you think it should be located?
Yes, I do support the need for a new bridge. Basically, what I'm hoping is that the Wilmington Metropolitan Planning Organization will narrow down the number of locations, and I hope that they plan to involve the businesses and the citizens in that area so that the location can be picked by everybody. Our commissioner, Mr. Williams, is on that Wilmington MPO, so I'm hoping that he will advise us of the locations as they are getting narrowed down. Thank you.
Mr. Hickman, do you support the need for a new bridge? Where do you think it should go?
As a resident of Brunswick Forest, I can tell you I do support the new bridge. I go through that traffic every single day, and it is a nightmare, so we definitely need to address that. Now, the question is where do we put the bridge? And that's the million-dollar question. I don't want it in my backyard. I'll be honest with you. I do have a fair bias there. I did put money into my home, and I want to make sure it retains its value. So I do value a more southern crossing in some of the more empty parcels that are there, while being sensitive to the people that live in Snee Farm and that community there as well. So we do need to take into account everybody, not just Brunswick Forest. Where it goes, I would like to see it cross over to Independence Boulevard. I hate to keep referencing Cary, but if you look at the development of Raleigh, the belt line they developed around that city, property values have dramatically increased inside that beltway, and I think we can apply that here to Leland as well. I think you're going to see an influx of businesses and new jobs if we do build that bridge.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flythe, do you support the need for a new bridge? Where do you think it should go?
Yes, I do. I failed to mention in my opening statement that I served as a member of the Brunswick County Planning Board a few years ago, and during that period of time, Brunswick County was the 14th fastest growing county in the nation. There were several routes that could have been used at that particular time that would have not been so evasive in terms of subdivisions, but that's what happens when we fail to act when we should. We had the necessary planning, we did not have the necessary implementation, and I would support the effort similar to the effort they had in Charleston, where they had that Richter Bridge, and now they had this fantastic looking bridge that adds so much to the city, and a new bridge that adds so much to the county, and we should do it so that it would be the least invasive route for us.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Forte, do you support the need for a new bridge? Where do you think it should go, sir?
I absolutely support a new bridge. Commissioner Williams stole my thunder. I was also going to point out that you were a little tardy tonight, John, and because you were stuck crossing over the bridges.
Well,
Traffic demands a new bridge, river crossing. It's pretty simple. We've all been stuck in the traffic coming and going into New Hanover County. I believe, as everybody here has said, I think, that it's got to go a little bit further south than Brunswick Forest. It's a brand-new community. It can't go into Brunswick Forest. We got to find some land south of that and bring a river crossing somewhere into Wilmington. Again, either Independence Boulevard or maybe Shipyard Boulevard, so you could get to everything in Wilmington or from Wilmington into our great county.
thank you, sir. Mr. Hickman, your first response to the next question. Bridges don't just appear, they have to be paid for. Federal, state, local funding is the way to, what do you think is the best way to pay for it? And do you support tolls as one way to help offset the cost of paying for that bridge?
That is an unfortunate reality. Bridges cost money. I think we've looked at some of the estimates, and they've been around $1 billion. And I can tell you that Brunswick County can't afford that. So obviously local funds are out as far as that goes. I'd love to see federal. I'd love to see state. If we can lobby to make that happen, I think that would be the route to go. In relation to tolls, I have driven around 540 in Raleigh. I was there when my son was in the hospital there, and we traveled around that route. And it did cost a little money, but in what it saved in time and gas, it was a worthy investment, I feel like, for travel time. So I would look at that overall picture to make that decision as far as that goes. But I think tolls could be something we look at, and I would be open to discussing in a bipartisan type fashion.
Mr. Forte, what do you think the best way to pay for the bridge would be? And do you support tolls as one option to pay for it?
John, it's my understanding that locally, well, bridges, period, are state responsibility. I don't believe it even falls under the jurisdiction of the county. It's the state's job to build bridges. And yes, I've heard the same numbers, nearly $1 billion. Tolls are an unfortunate sin. As you could tell from my southern accent, I'm used to paying tolls. I've paid them all my life until I moved here. And I hate to go back to paying them, but tolls are basically a use tax, you know, or a user fee. If you're going to use the bridge, you can help pay for it. Not to mention, my brother worked on the George Washington Bridge as a toll collector for many years. That bridge is perpetual maintenance. It doesn't end. So it's not just paid $1 billion, it's never ending.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McMillian, how would you support paying for the bridge that everyone concedes we need? And would you support tolls as one option to pay for it?
I really don't like the idea of tolls. The citizens in the area are already saddled down with a lot of bills, and to add something else is going to cause them undue heartache. I think the way that we can afford to do a lot of things that we can't at this particular time is to increase employment possibilities. There are lots of different things that can be done. It comes to mind something that was mentioned to me on the campaign trail about incontinence supply industry. As long as we live, we're going to have senior citizens and we're going to have babies. So why not provide our own resources right here in this area so that we can derive additional revenue to use for projects and not burden the taxpayers?
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Flythe, what do you consider to be the best way to pay for the bridge? And would you support tolls as one payment option?
John, if we can improve the political atmosphere, then I would definitely suggest or recommend that we pursue federal and state funding for this bridge. However, I figure that may not be coming soon. So I would, as a last resort, try to come up with some modified program in regards to tolls. And I know in terms of the ferries on the Outer Banks, they have some way that citizens in the area, living in the area, do not have to pay as much as, say, tourists. So we may have to come up with this type of setup so that the area citizens will not be burdened with tolls each time they go across the river to Wilmington. And then, of course, we should set up some type of citizens committee. And John, you would be the first one that I recommend to help us solve this problem.
If you'd have heard me talking when I was trying to get across here, Mr. Flythe, I don't know if I'd be a good member of that board. Ms. Sykes, how do you propose to pay for the bridge that everyone concedes we need? Would you support tolls as one payment option, ma'am?
Well, it's evident that we need a new bridge, and so we're all in favor of that. So I don't agree with tolls. I think basically if we can get around not going the toll, that's not one of my ways of collecting to pay for a bridge. But however, if it's the only way to get the crossing across the river, then we might have to do that. But I would revisit that at that time.
Mr. Williams, how would you prefer the funding for the bridge, and would you support tolls as one possible payment option, sir?
Thank you, John. One point of information for those of you that may have moved from other states. In North Carolina, there are no county roads, and that's different from many other states where you do have county-maintained roads. Those don't exist in North Carolina at all at this point, and it's the official position of the State Association of County Commissioners to keep it that way. Imagine if you had 100 different road systems in the state of North Carolina. That would not be very sustainable. In terms of how to pay for this, I think it's the state's responsibility to build those roads. I think that they need to find a way to do that. In terms of tolls, every dollar I spend on a toll will probably save me $3 on blood pressure medicine.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Sykes, I'm going to ask you for the first response to the next question, ma'am. Do you see the county's workforce growing significantly over the next 4 years? And if so, do you think additional taxes will be needed to fund any services to those extra workers?
Yes, I do see the county's workforce growing because our county is growing. We're one of the fastest growing counties in the state. With growth comes increased services that people would like to have, and also increased revenues. So with some of the changes taking place, it could result in tax increases. But with the growth, it could stabilize. But only during budget time will we know that. So we have to look at the budget, but I continue to support less spending and low taxes.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. McMillian, do you think the county workforce will grow significantly over the next 4 years, and do you envision needing additional taxes to fund any services?
If I'm elected District 4 County Commissioner, I certainly do think that the workforce will grow. It will have no alternative but to grow, because my focus will be on doing what's necessary to attract and maintain various sources of employment. Now, as far as the taxes increasing, I don't think it'll be necessary, because the kind of employment opportunities that I envision attracting here to the county will be livable wage jobs, and therefore our revenue from different residents in the county will increase, and it won't be a need for increased taxes.
Mr. Forte, do you see the county workforce growing significantly in the next 4 years, and do you think an additional tax increase will be needed to fund any services for them?
Workforce has to grow. Real estate is booming like it was in 2005 and 2006. More people means more employees. They have to work in order to pay for their homes and all that. But in the business world, you always hear the line, volume takes care of itself. Well, people are kind of the same way. The more people that move in, that's more property taxes we're collecting. For every new home, I know in Boiling Spring Lakes alone, 97 new construction permits were issued in 2016 so far. I mean, that's a couple of hundred people. That's a lot of new tax dollars in ad valorem taxes. That's happening countywide. So it'll almost take care of itself. Will the county's workforce itself have to increase to compensate? We'll have to wait and see. It depends. I mean, 40,000 people move in, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Williams, do you see the county workforce growing significantly in the next 4 years? And do you think additional tax increases will be needed to fund any services?
I do think that as the number of people who move into the county continues to increase, that certainly there will be additions needed on county staff. In the general fund side, which would include our general government employees and our law enforcement, I believe we can plan and sustain those with the revenues that we will see from increased property taxes and increased sales taxes. For our utilities employees, our utilities are enterprise funds that do not receive tax funds. They are operated entirely on the user fees, and I believe that any growth that's needed there can be sustained from the increases in the user fees as that customer base grows.
Mr. Hickman, do you see the county workforce growing significantly in the next 4 years? And do you think additional taxes will be needed to fund any services for them?
I would like to see that happen, but in the current commission, the way it's going right now, I do not see that happening. So in order to pay for some of the services that we're going to need, if it's unaddressed, yeah, that is a possibility, and that's what I'm afraid of. That's why I'm running for office. If you look at the three biggest employers in Brunswick County, you have Duke Energy, Brunswick County educators, and the Brunswick County government. And my opponent over here is talking about bringing on more staff onto government. What I want to do is make the government that we have run more efficiently. I want to spend less money on government. I want to get some development going on so we can bring new jobs into this county, new clean, green jobs. We have the Northwest Industrial Park over there. We had the multimodal transportation system that's being developed to run rail all the way from Wilmington to Charlotte. We have a prime opportunity to bring new jobs and businesses to this area, high-paying jobs. Right now, the types of jobs we're bringing in are service industry jobs. We need high-paying jobs to help offset the possibility of a possible tax increase if we keep going at the current course the way the current commission is going.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flythe, do you see the county workforce growing significantly in the next 4 years? If so, do you think an additional tax increase will be needed to fund any services for them?
The workforce will definitely expand or increase significantly because of the population explosion that we are undergoing at this time. I don't think that the tax rate would have to increase if we make the investment now in our schools. We need to pass the $152 million school bond proposal so that we can create a skilled workforce in this county. If we have a skilled workforce, that means that it would be an incentive for companies to come into Brunswick County. And when they come, they would automatically expand the tax base, so it's not necessary. And one other thing in favor of the school bond, all of us as citizens of Brunswick County have the vested interest. Why? Because the graduates will be your air conditioner repairman, your auto repairman at the garage, and also the x-ray technician when you go to your dentist or your doctor. So you have a vested interest in passing this bond.
Thank you, sir. Looking for, I think the way things are going to look out here, we may be able to have 2 questions from the audience. So if there's anyone who would like to ask a question of the commissioners, we're going to let every one of them respond. So if you go ahead and stand up there. I want to do one more question here first to all the candidates. And Mr. Flythe, I'm going to ask you for the first response, sir. Do you support seismic testing and offshore drilling off the coast of North Carolina for oil or natural gas?
John, I indicated in my opening statement that I do not support, imply that I do not support this type of effort. And that's the reason is because it jeopardizes our tourist industry. Do you know that we had more than $500 million spent by visitors in Brunswick County last year? We have other things that we can do in order to grow the economy in Brunswick County, and one of them would be investing in clean energy. I was happy when the board approved a zoning change so that a solar farm could be started in Brunswick County. And of course, we have wind farms and other clean energy and tourist-related jobs that we can bring into the area. So we do not need this type of effort off our coast, which is part of a national agenda, not a local agenda.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hickman, do you support seismic testing and offshore drilling off the coast for oil or natural gas?
Absolutely not. Our most valuable resource is our environment, our beaches. That's what drives people to come to this area. If we have the potential to damage that due to oil spills and things such as that, that's going to lower the draw to this area, and we're already in peril as far as not having good, high-paying jobs here. So I think that would jeopardize the really good thing we have going for us now. And also, I do feel like the jobs that would come from that potentially wouldn't benefit people in Brunswick County. They would benefit people that are the oil millionaires and things such as that. It's not going to bring money to us. So I would definitely 100% be against that.
Ms. McMillian, do you support seismic testing and offshore drilling off the coast for oil or natural gas?
No, I don't support seismic testing nor offshore drilling because we derive a lot of our revenue from tourism. Plus, I'm just pro-environment, and the idea that we could have an oil spill right here on the coast is something that really frightens me. There are so many times when different things happen, and we look back in hindsight and we say, I wish I had not. This is one of those things we should definitely avoid. We will not have sufficient jobs, sufficient income, sufficient anything to justify damaging our environment.
Ms. Sykes, do you support seismic testing and offshore drilling off the coast for oil or natural gas?
I'm not for it or against it. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions that needs to be addressed first. But I will relook at it if it ever comes before our board. To me, I don't think we have the authority to answer that question or do that. I think it's a federal and state level. But I support the towns and cities that have done a resolution saying they don't want it. So I will do what the taxpayers request.
Mr. Forte, do you support seismic testing and offshore drilling off the coast for oil or natural gas?
In 2 words, heck no. Protect our coastline and our beaches at all cost. There's not going to be a lot of jobs. If it were to happen, there's not a whole lot of jobs for local people. They're going to come from all over. Let's not forget what happened in the Gulf Coast with their oil rigs. Do we really want that on our beaches? Our beaches is our #1. The beaches are our #1 economic engine. It's what drives this county. I don't want to mess with that at all.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Williams, do you support seismic testing and offshore drilling off the coast for oil or natural gas?
John, I think those are 2 separate questions, and I'll say that I'm not opposed to the seismic testing to know what our options are. As far as drilling, to me, the jury's still out because there are a lot of questions that would need to be answered. I'll tell you what I would have to be convinced of before I could support it. First of all, I'd have to be convinced that they can do it in a way that's not going to harm our beaches. Second thing, I'd have to be convinced that it will actually advance American energy independence, which is an argument that often gets lost in this, and I'm not sure that we would have enough resources out there to do that. Thirdly, I'd have to be convinced in order for this to be done in our area that it would actually have some economic impact that's positive and not negative. I do think there would be the potential for lots of blue-collar jobs for lots of people who, no matter how many white-collar jobs you recruit, are not going to ever be qualified to do them, but that's something that I would, again, have to be convinced of. But I can tell you that when my toes are in the sand, there are 2 things I don't want to see within my line of sight, an oil rig or a windmill. And I think that's another question I'd be interested to hear people's opinions on.
Thank you, sir. We do have 2 people, I think, who wanted to stand up and ask questions, but Ms. Crawford, I'm going to let you ask a question first, ma'am, and I'm going to let all of the candidates respond. Mr. Williams, I'm going to start with you for the question first. Ms. Crawford?
Yes, I've heard the statement, not in my backyard. Well, if not in your backyard, whose? He asked the question, where do you want the bridge to go? My question is, where do you want it to start at? So then whose backyard would you like this bridge to start at?
I can tell you my opinion as far as where the bridge should start. It should start where 140 intersects with 17 because it needs to be a natural continuation of that. And you know, my backyard is not any of the routes, so there's not an NIMBY potential for me because I don't live in the Brunswick Forest community. But there is a cost associated with any route, the cost of acquiring the land and the right-of-way. And if you're going through $500,000 houses and you have to buy those at fair market value, that's going to drive up the cost that every one of you will pay one way or the other, whether it's through a toll or whether it's through a tax. I think we should look at what DOT calls the least environmentally damaging practical alternative is their term. It also needs to be the one that's the most cost efficient for the taxpayers. But to where it should start, I think where 140 and 17 intersect now.
Ms. Sykes?
Well, basically, I agree with Commissioner Williams here. It's not in my backyard. I live in Southport, so it's coming across to Leland, and Mr. Hickman here is Mr. Hickman here is in Brunswick Forest. So I agree with Commissioner Williams that the route, but I still say that the businesses and the citizens need to be involved, and it will cost for an environmental study, so you have to make sure of the locations that you're going to consider, because that's an extra cost.
Mr. Hickman, your response, sir?
Basically, I understand the concerns there, but you have to look at Snee Farm. Snee Farm backs right up to the 140 intersection of 17. We do need to be sensitive to the citizens that do live there and are tax-paying citizens. They pay theirs just like I pay mine in Brunswick Forest. Now, I've looked at Google Earth plenty of times, and I've imagined where I would love to put this. So if I can allow and put my 2 cents on that, there's a big tract of land between Brunswick Forest and Snee Farm. Now, it might not be the most direct route for 140, but hopefully we could try to find a way to engineer that so that it can go in those empty parcels that are there that wouldn't impact anybody currently living there. Now, in the future, if you choose to live next to the bridge, that's your choice. You want to live there, if that's, you want to pay the money, you can. So that is your option. But the people that are already living there currently now do need to have some say and a voice in that matter. And I am one of those people, and I'd like to see it go a little further south in between those parcels.
Mr. Flythe, your response, sir?
I was familiar with the various routes that we had a few years ago when I served on the planning board. I'm not familiar with all the routes that they proposed at this particular time. I'm aware of the subdivisions they have in the area of Sneed Farm and Brunswick Forest. And what I would suggest is that of course, we will have public hearings. And at that particular time, I hope that the citizens, as well as the powers that be that will make the final decision, will weigh not only how much how much interference they have with the subdivisions as versus the efficiency of the highway that will be built, because you don't want to go too far out of the way that would create a headache for drivers. And on the other hand, you don't want to have to destroy or create problems for a lot of homeowners. So again, I believe that if we have to realize that we cannot do anything unless we have an inconvenience for maybe some of our citizens.
Okay. Mr. Forte, your thoughts, sir?
I understand what Commissioner Williams said about starting it at routes 40 and 17, which is a decent spot to work, a lot of vacant land. Wesley, I know exactly the lot you're talking about, 57 acres of wooded land that's right there, and I agree with you. That's a great spot to start it, because
Bipartisanship here. This is what it's all about.
Because there is literally nothing there. It's 57 acres of dense wood. It would be an ideal spot to start it and get it out there.
Ms. McMillian, your thoughts on where you would like this bridge to start, ma'am?
They have spoken to exactly the area that I had in mind. I live close to there, so I know that that's some of that virgin property that can be utilized.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, I believe you said you had a question. Mr. Forte, I'm going to ask you for the first response to the gentleman's question. Sir?
I do. Michael Callahan. I'm aware of the high level of poverty in the county, and it's been that way for some time, especially adult poverty and childhood poverty. One of the things that I think could help alleviate the poverty problem is housing. And I'd like to know the candidates' ideas about reducing the levels of poverty among our children and our adults in the area of affordable housing, workforce housing, and transitional housing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Forte, your thoughts?
Councilman, you know darn well how I feel about that. It's all about education. With enough education, nobody should live in poverty. I am all about getting our kids educated. That's why I'm so involved in this college in itself. We raise the money for scholarships. Nobody should be denied an education. As far as affordable housing goes, when these developments are built, and you have sorry, Wesley, here goes to bipartisanship, you have a Brunswick Forest where they're intending to build nearly 5,000 homes. A small percentage of that should be affordable housing, and the builder should be able to absorb that. And I think in each one of these developments, they could put housing up that certainly fits into the building of this entire development, but you can have houses in there that are affordable. Now, I don't know what affordable is these days. Is it 100,000, 150,000, 200,000? What's an affordable house now? I don't know. We'd have to find out what that is.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Hickman, your response to the gentleman's question, sir.
It's hard to follow this guy. He comes up with the same idea as I do, so I really have to agree with a lot of what you're saying there as well. First, it does start with education. The more we educate our population, the better jobs and better opportunity they have. Now, my job as commissioner would be to help bring those jobs to the area, help create an environment that's a good breeding ground for those types of things. And that leads to better opportunity, higher paying jobs, and they can afford housing on their own. That's the ultimate goal. But again, to have some sort of subsidized housing in some of these nicer areas or around different areas of the county, not necessarily just Brunswick Forest, but all around the county would be a wise thing to do.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flythe, your response to the gentleman's question on poverty and low-income housing, affordable housing, sir.
I believe I have a few ways that we can create affordable housing in the county. One way is to create mixed zoning districts that would include commercial as well as residential, units. We also can provide tax incentives to developers so that they could create what Mike was saying in regards to affordable homes within the subdivisions, like cottages. We also need rental apartments that could be provided and subsidized. And then, of course, one other way is to use what we already have, that is nonprofits, like Brunswick Housing Opportunities and Habitat for Humanity. Increase the funding that we are already giving them so that they can build more affordable home units.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Williams, your response, sir?
Thank you, and thank you, Mike, for the question. I think first and foremost, as several others have said, it does start with education. And living in a community where there is a lot of poverty, and some of my neighbors have been poverty through multi-generations, I think the first thing a lot of the young people need is hope. They need to have some hope that they can go out and they can succeed. And one thing we've got to change in our schools is the idea that if you don't wear one of these to work, you're somehow not a success. There's nothing wrong with doing a trade and working, getting your hands dirty, because they have skills I don't have. I mean, as far as the housing, I would like to see us work with some of the smaller towns to recruit more affordable homes into their towns. You've got some towns that are struggling to build their tax base. You'd have a win-win where the town would build its tax base and they would have affordable homes that may not fit in some of the other communities, and I think that would be a good way to approach that.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McMillian, your response to the gentleman's question on poverty and affordable housing.
I grew up poor. I'm still poor because my mother taught me to share, and there were certain times when I did not perhaps keep as much as I should have kept for myself, but I did end up having a good feeling. So I think what we need to do is to consider that we're here for a short period of time, and when we can help other people, it makes a big difference. Now, education is the key to moving in this society. Years ago, there were different vocational technical opportunities in the schools. Habitat for Humanity helps a lot of people. Merging some efforts through the school system as well as Habitat for Humanity can make a difference in lots and lots of people here in Brunswick County. But the thing we need to consider is we could be in the position that those other people are in, and instead of looking down on them, we need to reach down and try to give them a helping hand.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Sykes, your response to the gentleman's question on poverty and affordable housing.
I agree that education is the most important thing for poverty. A lot of you don't know, I grew up in a home where there was 10 of us, and my daddy was an alcoholic. So I started work when I was 11. So I think it's important to have children or young adults to work as they're growing up. Today, I think they're given a lot of things, and I think they need to learn about the workforce. I also know that they need hope. We had a lot of people to reach out to me, and that gave me a lot of hope to stay positive and move forward. I think it's very important that we have low rent housing for the low-income workers, because our businesses, the fast food restaurants, they all need it. Even your nursing home, they don't have a high salary, so we do need the low-income, affordable housing for them.
Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, we have wrapped up the question and answer section of our forum for the Brunswick County Commissioner candidates. We're going to give each one of the candidates a 60-second closing statement. We'll go in reverse order of the way we did for the opening statement. So we'll begin with District 5 Commissioner candidate Frank Williams. Frank?
Thank you, John, and thank you to everyone again for being here, and thank you to all of the candidates as well. I think it's important that we have good people who are willing to put themselves forward for office, and I jokingly said last time, thank you even to the guy who's running against me for being willing to step forward, because you've got to have good people get engaged in the public process. I'm here to tell you that I think Brunswick County is all in great shape, and if it wasn't, a lot of you would be living somewhere else, as I said earlier. One of the things I hear a lot is how much less you pay in taxes here than you did where you moved from. And that's not the only barometer of success. We do have, by my count, the 12th lowest tax rate in the state, in spite of the fact that property values dropped by 10% in the last revaluation. So that's something you need to take into consideration. We spend the lion's share of our budget on education and public safety. And according to the numbers I got from our county manager, we are in the top 20% in the state in terms of the county's contribution per pupil to our school system. So even though our tax rate is low, we're still putting the lion's share of our money to education and to public safety, and we just expanded our investment in public safety in light of some of the things that have happened around the country with people targeting law enforcement officers. We wanted to make sure our sheriff's office has the things it needs.
Thank you, sir.
Brunswick County is in great shape. I ask for your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next, for our closing statement, we go to District 5 County Commission candidate Wesley Hickman. Mr. Hickman.
Thank you very much, and thank all of you for coming out here today to listen to what we have to say. I just want to address a few things that my opponent has stated, that we do pay less in taxes than a lot of other places. That is very true, and I am happy to say that I live here and pay those taxes. I do want to point out the commission's wasteful spending, because that all comes down to brass tacks when you're voting for myself or my candidate here, or my opponent here. $82,000 wasted in the Economic Development Committee, $3.2 million wasted in a Holden Beach land purchase. The sheriff's is requested for a shooting range, and I believe that was upwards of over $1 million, which I agree with, but there was a $400,000 sniper lane added on to that facility, which I believe is a complete mismanagement of funds. If you want to see where we could spend that money, let's look at mental health issues, look at drug issues, look at putting more police on the streets to help combat the drug problem that's in this county. If you elect me as your commissioner, I believe I can have a prescription for progress and eliminate some of these issues. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Mr. Hickman, thank you very much, sir. Next, for our closing statement of no more than 60 seconds, we will go to District 4 County Commission candidate Brenda Faye McMillian. Ms. McMillian.
I've lived here in Brunswick County for 62 years, and I plan to continue living here. I had opportunities that children and adults don't have today. I started working in tobacco when I was about 5 or 6 years old. It took two of us, my cousin and I, to hand tobacco over in the Willenboro area. I know what it is to work, I know what it is to play, and I know what it is to care about people. And I care about each and every one of you, and I want you to have the resources that you need to have a good life. And the way that I propose to do that is to listen to you. I can think I know exactly what you need or what you want, but until I talk to you and listen attentively to you, I have erred. And I plan to do everything within my power. I know I am the best candidate for the District 4 position. I've even asked my opponent to vote for me. I'm just that confident.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, very much. Next, for a closing statement, District 4 County Commission candidate Mike Forte. Mr. Forte.
Thank you, John, and thank you to the ABCPOA, and thank you to each of you for being here and putting yourself out, and thank you to each of you for being here. I'm sure you'd rather be home watching the World Series tonight. I believe in the 3 E's. That's the economy, education, and efficiency. That's the way you run a government. That's the way I will run a government. I will fight for education, I will fight for jobs, and I will fight for our seniors. Seniors need all the help they can get. They're kind of behind the 8 ball. I know I've spent 10 years taking care of my in-laws who both recently passed. And I also believe that the job of any elected official, I don't care at any level, is that job 1 is public safety. We must support our police, our fire, our EMTs, give them the tools they need to protect, number one, themselves and to protect each of us. If you believe as I do, please vote for Mike Forte, District 4, County Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The two candidates running for District 3 are with us this evening. We'll go first for a closing statement to District 3 County Commission candidate Pat Sykes. Ms. Sykes, 60 seconds for your closing statement, ma'am.
Okay. Again, I'd like to thank each of you for being here tonight. I am Pat Sykes, and I'm asking for your vote. I do want to clarify that the $3.5 million land purchase I voted against. Basically, I stood my ground on that decision. And I will continue, during those times, there's a lot of things that I ask a lot of questions about in meetings. And I will continue to ask those questions. I will continue to be transparent. I will continue to work hard and keep the expenditures down and taxes low. It's been an honor serving you the last 4 years. I'm asking for your prayers and another 4 years to serve you as your commissioner. Vote for Pat Sykes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, District 3 County Commission candidate, Mr. William Flythe. Mr. Flythe.
Citizens of Brunswick County, I want to share my formula for success with you. Hopefully you agree that there should be a change in county leadership. First of all, adequate funding for public education, plus good stewardship of financial resources, plus protection of our coastal environment equals highly satisfied Brunswick County citizens. I already told you I believe in and strongly support the bond issue. Also, on day one, I recommend to the board that we instruct the tax office to aggressively pursue the $10 million of delinquent taxes owed by our developers and land speculators. And in reference to what Mrs. Sykes said about the $3.5 million, I hold her responsible for not reappointing a Brunswick County commissioner that would have become president of the National Foundation, something that would have brought honor and prestige not only to the college, but to our county as well.
Okay.
Bill Flythe, candidate for Brunswick County Commissioner. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 6 candidates running for Brunswick County Commission, please give them a round of applause. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here.